Didn't you get on a boat and check out these waters?
No.
Well, this is not a boat accident. It wasn't any propeller. It wasn't any coral reef. And it wasn't Jack the Ripper. It was a shark.
Back in 2019, I was offered a John Mayer Daytona. That's the solid yellow gold with the green dial. Well, almost offered. It was offered to a guy ahead of me, but he was getting cold feet and maybe not going to pick it up. And they asked if he didn't, would I be interested in taking it? I, of course, said yes, for sure. In the end, he actually went ahead and picked it up a few days later, so I got left out. But at the time, that watch was 33,000 euros retail, but it had shot into the sky and was trading for north of 45 to 50,000 because of what John Mayer, the singer-songwriter, guitarist, said about it, that it was a future classic, a holy grail watch. One reason why the guy ahead of me was maybe getting cold feet is that was already beginning to soften. The hysteria over that watch only lasted a few weeks at first, and it was already back down at about 37, 38,000 on the market. Still a fair margin to be made on the watch if you intended on flipping it, but nothing like the 50,000 before. 4 years later, the other side of a watch market crash, when the watch market apparently is dead, that watch, ladies and gentlemen, is going on the grey market for north of $75,000. Now, if you spend more than 2 minutes on the internet looking up the state of the market, most channels are going to tell you that the watch market crashed last year and that the watch market is indeed dead. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you that the watch market is very much far from being dead. And in fact, there was actually never any crash in the watch market. The Rolex bubble did not burst. This is no boating accident, and it wasn't Jack the Ripper. It was a spike. That's all. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm your host, Oisin O'Malley. Before I do anything, let's take a look at what I'm wearing. I'm wearing the Royal Oak chronograph from Audemars Piguet, one of my favorite watches that I own. And I'm wearing it not by any accident today. This is actually one of the watches that was affected the most by the spike of 2022. Well, what is this spike I'm talking about? Well, this is what I want to get into today. What is it? When did it happen? Where did it come from? And where did it go? And Lenny's going to help me with the questions. Hit it, Lenny.
What the fuck are you talking about? What the hell is a spike?
We've seen over the past 6-7 years the watch market go slowly up and up. Watches just gaining in value, particularly Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, Richard Mille, etc., etc. But at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022, a very strange thing happened. The graph, instead of going up nice and slow and gentle like this, it just went like this and pointed toward the sky. And if you look at any watch graph whatsoever, particularly for the hype pieces, you'll see this horn shape sticking out like this across the board. That's the spike.
How did this happen?
There are a lot of theories as to why this happened and where this spike came from. And like a great many things, it's probably a combination of different factors. But I think it's universally accepted at this point that one of the biggest catalysts that led to the spike occurring was crypto. Kids all around the world investing in crypto were becoming overnight millionaires. They were investing a couple of grand one night and the following morning waking up to six figures. And while it's all very nice to see all this money on your computer screen, it is kind of monopoly money until you turn it into hard assets or you convert it to cash. Now, converting crypto to cash can be a little bit difficult, and there's always the tax man watching. However, if you purchase things with your crypto, you can avoid many of those problems. Enter watches. At this point, the news about luxury watches being very good investments, or at very least strong assets, had gone beyond the borders, the perimeters of just the watch aficionado world. It had bled out into the regular world, people who had no idea which watches to buy or anything really about horology at all. They just wanted to get into something where they could park their money. And watches were a great candidate. It's not like buying a yacht or a big expensive car where you need storage and maintenance and so on. Watches are so small, but they can be worth so much money. Grey market dealers wanted in on the crypto too, and they started accepting crypto as payment. So the crypto guys were happy to buy the watches really at any price. I mean, you and I would never spend $50,000 on a Panda Daytona. But when you've got 6 figures or 7 figures on your computer screen of crypto that just appeared out of nowhere, you don't care if it's 40 or 45 or 50,000. Well, the watch world began to become infested with these guys who knew nothing really about watches, but were just picking up all the hype pieces they read about. The Patek Philippe Nautilus, the Aquanaut, anything from Richard Mille, all of these APs, and of course, many hype Rolex, and even not so much hype Rolex, but just anything they could grab. The second factor, of course, was trader to trader. Because of these people stimulating the market who weren't really into watches, but just had a lot of extra cash all of a sudden, these traders were selling watches to each other and loaning watches to be sold and splitting the difference and so on. And the whole thing just started going up and up from there. There were very few real watch enthusiasts, end users, you might call them, actually paying these crazy astronomical prices for these watches. The John Mayer that I mentioned earlier reached, I think, a peak of around 140, 150,000 during the spike.
So what happened? Where did it go?
Well, the truth is that the spike had no real legs. The whole watch market was moving up at a slow and steady and strong and healthy pace up until then. But this spike really had no substance behind it. So the minute any panic happened, everybody just ran for the hills, of course. China went back into lockdown again. Putin invaded Ukraine. There were some scams uncovered about the crypto world, a lot of fake money being invented and so on, and probably a handful of other factors. The whole thing all landed at the same time. Crypto crashed, the market crashed, and watches suffered too. As it happens, watches actually suffered less than many of the other markets, believe it or not. So we all came hurtling back down to earth again. But a lot of people would have you believe that there was an actual crash. The watch market is still strong and healthy, and hype watches are still being sold for way over list. I believe that if the line was going up slowly on the graphs and then started going back down again, now we have a crash. When the graph is going up and then it spikes and then comes back down again and continues from where it left off, that's just an anomaly. It's like a cardiograph. Your heart had a little palpitation for a moment. There's a difference between a crash and coming off of a spike.
So where are we now?
We've pretty much resumed from exactly where we left off, if not a little bit higher. A root beer, for example, is a very sought after watch. Before the spike was going for about 17.5 on the market. Now you're looking at about 19. The John Mayer is also a great example. When the singer first made that statement about that watch, it went up to 50, then came back down to the low 40s or high 30s, and then started slowly crawling up. During the spike, it was absolute nonsense. It was astronomical. But now that things have come back to where they were before, we're looking at minimum of 65 to 70,000 for a John Mayer in used condition. A new one with stickers, probably 80 or 90. So the lines have just resumed where they were. All we had was a crazy hiccup in the market. That's all.
I don't think one of you are familiar with our problems.
I think that I am familiar with the fact that you are going to ignore this particular problem until it swims up and bites you on the ass.
Non-hype pieces have come back to where they were before. A Datejust, for example, will go for roughly retail, depending on the configuration. If it's a mint green one, you're looking at a bit more than than retail. The precious metal watches, the platinum and the solid golds, are going for retail or a little under. That's exactly where we were before the spike. You simply cannot walk into an authorized dealer and buy these watches. So there's a long list, and 1 in 100 gets the call. The rest of us have to wait or just turn to the grey market. And by early summer of last year, pretty much everything had gone back to exactly where it was before. But that's when the really interesting things started happening. A bunch of new creatures were born out of the fall from the spike on the other side. They're more like monsters to me. In fact, I call them spike monsters. And yes, I'm going to go through a list of the various different types of spike monster. Hit it, Lenny. Lenny? What's the problem?
Do we really need to talk about these assholes?
Dude, I think so, man. It's actually the lessons we need to learn out of this whole thing. So unfortunately, bro, we got to get into it. Okay? Okay.
Spike monster number 1. The clairvoyant.
Immediately after the spike came to an end, we were faced with all these fortune tellers, these clairvoyants, that all of a sudden could miraculously see the future somehow. They were saying things like, oh, wait till you see we're heading into a terrible depression. It'll be just like the 1930s again. Wait till you see, this time 6 months or a year from now, you won't be able to give your Rolex away for free. And they had all sorts of predictions, and they'd quote all sorts of people. But I had one question for these guys. If you have such incredible perception, where were you before? When COVID first hit and everybody was locked in their homes, they couldn't go to work, and we were sure that the watch market was going to be first to crash. After all, who the hell needs a fancy watch in times like these? Instead, it actually stimulated the watch market. Now, you'll get a ton of people who'll tell you why after the fact. In America, they would be known as Monday morning quarterbacks. No doubt people in the comments right now are typing in, oh, well, people didn't have money to spend on holidays and cars and things, so they had to put their money somewhere. Yeah, now we know. But I want to meet the guy who tells me before the fact. No one predicted the spike happening in the first place, and no one predicted the fall from the spike either. But somehow, when we came off the spike, everyone was a goddamn clairvoyant and could miraculously tell us all about an unknown future. We're approaching the end of 2023 now, and so far, this terrible, terrible recession has not yet happened.
Spike monster 2. The hopeful and the haters.
The hopeful and the haters are very different people, but they say the same things. Let's start with the hopefuls. The hopefuls were people who were hoping to maybe get one of these hype pieces, a Pepsi, a root beer, an Aquanaut, one of these, whatever the case may be. And as the watch market grew and grew and got stronger and stronger, and watches just went up and up and up, they saw those watches getting farther and farther out of their reach. When the spike happened, it just seemed impossible. When we came off the spike, the hopefuls didn't see it as coming off a spike. They wanted to see it as a whole crash, as the entire watch market falling like a house of cards. And they were hoping that they could walk in to a Patek Philippe store and say, give me the thing for retail or even at a discount. And when you hope for something that much, you begin to tell yourself that lie, that that's actually going to happen. Mind you, they did have help, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. The haters, on the other hand, said all the same stuff, but they did it because they despise the world of luxury watches. They look at other people spending $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 on watches, and it kind of makes them sick. It's based on envy in most cases. They wish they could afford to buy those watches, but seeing as they can't, they just kind of love to hate the people who can. It's the old-fashioned poor resents the rich shit. Now, those guys were getting boners for this. When they saw the spike come down, they thought it was the beginning of the end. And they thought the entire luxury high-end watch market was finally coming crashing down and the whole thing would just go ablaze. And they were getting their popcorn and soda ready to sit and watch it and laugh and smile. Of course, it was no such thing. Crazy, ridiculous prices just fell down to ridiculous prices. Panda Daytona is still double retail today on the grey market. So is a Pepsi. A root beer is still 50% more expensive. All of these watches are still going for above retail. If you're a hater and you're watching right now, you really need to stop telling yourself that the watch market is dead and there's been a huge crash and the Rolex bubble has burst and all of that horseshit, because none of it's true. But I can't fully blame you because you've had a little help. And that brings me to maybe the most heinous offenders here. Spike Monster number 3.
Asshole YouTubers.
YouTubers in the watch space figured out pretty damn fast that it makes for great clicks and great attention to your channel when you tell everybody there's a disaster happening.
It's all psychological. You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
There were videos entitled, "The Rolex Bubble Has Burst," "Rolex is in Trouble." It was all doom and gloom messages. And of course, that was attracting a lot of people, a lot of clicks by people with regular curiosity, other people in the watch world, but mostly from the hopeful and the haters. Those guys were getting an erection for this shit. They were licking it up like kittens licking cream. Some channels even based their entire channel on that narrative that the watch market is dead and kept repeating these slogans over and over for their audience who were just like, yeah, say it again, say it again. I just want to hear it again. Give me a t-shirt with it written. They were getting so erect for this shit and they were just subbing and subbing and clicking and clicking. And the YouTubers knew that. It's a lot less sexy to report on a momentary spike in the market that maybe hurt a handful of individuals in the watch world. It's much sexier to talk about end of days kind of shit that really brings in the crowds.
Spike Monster number 4. Time to sell those fakes.
You may not know this, but in the past year or two, counterfeit and fake watches have reached an unprecedented level of accuracy. They are very, very difficult to spot, especially the expensive ones. And the people who come across those watches the most are grey market dealers. They wind up on their counter more often than for anyone else. Now, somewhere in the back of all of those said grey market dealers, there's a drawer. And in that drawer are all the fakes that have come through their store. They've either purchased them and lost their ass on it, or they confiscated the watch because the guy was trying to sell them a fake and they just kept it and they're going to destroy it or whatever. Now, a lot of grey market dealers suffered on the back end of that spike. They had bought a lot of watches and now were losing a lot of money. Furthermore, they were having to face a new kind of buyer. People who had just watched some stupid video saying the watch market was dead and it was all over. And these people were walking in going, hey, I want my Pepsi for retail price now, or I want it for 14 grand, 15 grand. Way, way less. It's not even close to that even now that the market has completely settled. Well, these grey market dealers may be slimebags for the most part, but they're not stupid and they weren't going to take this shit sitting down. It's to my understanding, especially here in Italy, that some of these grey market dealers pulled that drawer open and took out the best, most convincing fakes that they had lost a lot of money on. And when these hopefuls and haters were walking in the door going, haha, it's all over, my dreams have finally come true, and now I want my Pepsi for 14k, they were saying, yes, sir, there it is. You're right. You were right all the time. They were appeasing this dream people had, and they were just luring them in like into a bear trap or something. It was like, oh yeah, you were right the whole time. We're all the suckers. All those people paying big top dollar for watches are all idiots. You were right. There's your Pepsi, sir. There's the box. There's the papers. 14,000, please. And right now, there are people watching this video, staring at this screen right now, who bought a watch during that period and they have a fake on their wrist. I guarantee you. So in the tizzy of the spike coming to an end and all the fake news and all the horse shit and the ramblings of various people across the internet, these are the victims and these are the monsters that were created out of the back end of it. And honestly, it's still not even fully settled even now. There are YouTubers who will tell you even today that because a solid gold sub or root beer can be found slightly under list, they'll tell you that that's a sign of the end. That's exactly how it was before the spike. It's been that way for a very, very long time. There's nothing new about it. You're either short-sighted or you're a stupid fucking con.
Will a spike ever happen again?
It's hard to tell. I mean, that which is actual is possible. So if it happened once, it technically could possibly happen again. But I'm certainly not going to make any predictions about what's going to happen in the future, because if looking at the past has taught me anything, it's that we have really no fucking clue what is going to happen in the future. And anybody who pretends they do should be treated with suspicion. Anyway, I hope that was an enjoyable video. A lot of people out there comparing prices from the top of the spike to now. It makes no sense to do that at all. You have to do it from pre-spike or post-spike. The spike itself is an anomaly and should be treated as such. Okay? Any last comments, Lenny?
I just think it's pathetic you have to explain this shit.
You said it, man. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again soon.
Don't have to take this abuse much longer.